Track 1. Teide National Park. In addition to so many other protected places at the regional level, in Spain there are 15 national parks, which are the country's most special natural spaces. El Teide National Park is the largest and oldest of the 4 in the Canary Islands. It was declared a national park in 1954 and occupies the central and highest area of Tenerife. In 2007, UNESCO also recognized the singularities of the El Teide National Park, which became part of the list of World Heritage Sites, mainly for 2 reasons: its obvious rich landscape and, above all, for having an advanced geological age, which translates into a great diversity of shapes and colors. This reveals how oceanic islands, such as the Canary Islands, evolve and are separated from the margins of the tectonic plates. El Teide is not the only volcano, but it is the most important. This colossal volcano is visible from almost anywhere on the island. With an altitude of 3,718 meters, it constitutes the highest level in Spain. In addition, measured from the bottom of the sea, it is also the 3rd highest and most volcanic structure on the planet, after the Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea in Hawaii. At the base station, the altitude is 2,356 meters. With the cable car, you will travel a distance of approximately 2 kilometers, going up a slope of 1,200 meters in just 8 minutes. Due to the rapid rise, the use of this means of transportation is not recommended for people with cardiovascular problems, pregnant women, or children under 3 years of age. The trip will be calm, with just a slight rocking as each turret passes. While discovering the landscape that opens before you, you can be accompanied by Track 2. Track 2. From the Pico del Teide cable car. After 10 years of hard work, the Pico del Teide cable car began operating in 1971. Since then, every day that weather conditions allow, and after a morning review, its 2 cable cars begin to transfer visitors who, like you, want to go to the top of this volcano. From the first meters, you will enjoy a much broader view. If you look down at the background, you will recognize a mountain chain, or semicircular wall, as if it were the stands of an amphitheater. It is the southern limit of the national park. Of all the peaks that stand out, the highest is Guajara Mountain, with an altitude of 2,718 meters. At its base appears the well-known area, Piedras Amarillas, also known as El Capricho for its unusual forms. Nearby, you will see the Parador de Turismo, and on the other side of the road, the pointed Rocas de Garcia. On the left, this time high in the mountains, white buildings will appear. They are the telescopes of the Teide Observatory, a world-renowned leading installation. Further, you will be able to distinguish the rugged Anaga Massif, on whose coast the city and the port of Santa Cruz de Tenerife are located. If the day is clear, you will also see the south coast, or the silhouette of the neighboring island of Gran Canaria, cut out on the horizon. It is also possible that the islands of La Gomera and El Hierro appear, behind the slopes of Teide, at the height of the 3rd turret. Soon you will reach the upper station, at an altitude of 3,555 meters, and located on a small landing known as La Ramblita. When you go outside, new sensations will surprise you. Maybe an icy breeze on your face, or some heaviness when breathing. In any case, take some time to feel the summit and prepare for your excursion. Then you can stand next to the gazebo railing and listen to Track 3. Track 3. Shapes that tell stories. Located on La Ramblita, which is the traditional name of this area of gentle slopes on which the last meters of the Teide rise. This is the starting point of the 4 routes offered by this audio guide. The views from here are spectacular. At the foot of the volcano, the Caldera de las Cañadas opens, which is 16 kilometers from side to side, and is limited by the semicircular wall that was already seen during the ascent. Now you can contemplate it calmly and realize that it is made of overlapping layers, like those of a cake. How do you think these landforms were generated? What geological story is the landscape telling us? We have to go back to a time when Teide did not yet exist. Instead, a more volcanic volcano building occupied the entire central area of Tenerife. Eruption after eruption, it began to destabilize, and, as had happened on previous occasions, ended up collapsing northward in a huge and rapid slide about 150,000 years ago. Within minutes, a huge piece of island disappeared into the sea, leaving in its place a great valley that was born precisely in that wall. They are the remains of the crumbling volcano. The filling of the hole began immediately. The first lavas were very fluid, but later they built the Teide, and finally, their accompanying volcanoes. Today, the result of this sequence of eruptions is mixed in the boiler, like the different colors in a painter's palette. On these surfaces, like a delicate dress, life is distributed in the form of shrubs and herbs, many unique in the world. In spring, the national park is filled with new colors and soft aromas. Turn 180 degrees now and face the apical cone, which rose just over 1,000 years ago. Teide, abode of fire, and lighthouse of the Atlantic. The Guanches called it Teide, which in Aboriginal language means something similar to hell. The chroniclers of the 16th century considered Teide the abode of the demons because of the frightful fire, noise, and trembling that it used to make. One of these events would be remembered forever. Legend has it that Wayota, El Maligno, kidnapped the sun god. Darkness seized the island, and the Guanches had to go to their supreme god, Achaman. But every time he tried to climb the slopes, Wayota threw fire darts at him. When he finally managed to climb to his mouth, there was a terrible fight that was heard on all the islands. Achaman managed to free the sun and seal Teide's door. The plug he put on is the last and perfect whitish rock cone that is located just in front of you. Today, we know this Aboriginal legend corresponds to the last eruption of El Teide, which happened in the 8th century. At that time, this volcano was already famous on the continent. Its altitude and geographical position aroused great fascination in travelers and philosophers. Already in the classical world, for authors like Herodotus, it was the Decolated Atlantean, or the Column of Heaven. Also, the Roman writer Pliny the Elder marveled at the perpetual snows of its summit. Even many historians and adventurers began to relate the Atlantic islands with the remains of the mythical Atlantis, and El Teide with Mount Atlas. In their works, they represented the Canary Islands as the highest parts of the supposed sunken continent. Later, at the beginning of European expansion in the 15th and 16th centuries, El Teide was considered the highest mountain in the world because it was seen from far away, cut into the sky. It was the Atlantic lighthouse, a key point in sailing south. The mentioning of the El Teide in diverse literary works continued century after century from the hand of both naturalists and travelers. From the 17th century, the bravest tried to get where you are. Many did not make it, and if they did, it was only once or a very limited number of times in their life. On the other hand, today, El Teide receives many visitors a day. To explore the surroundings, there are 3 trails that will allow you to enjoy the views from different angles, and a 4th option, to ascend or descend on foot to Montaña Blanca through the Alta Vista Refuge. This audio guide contains a self-guided route for each tour. If you already know which one to choose, you can directly access the first track as indicated in the trail guide. If you are still not sure, you can find a comfortable place in these surroundings and listen to a brief description of each route on track 5. Track 101. The past is written in the rock. As you know, this path was traced on the materials that emerged in the last eruption of El Teide, which happened in the 8th century. During this episode, the volcano expelled a shower of lava and incandescent stones that today make up the apical cone of El Teide. In addition, the lava spilled downhill from the crater, drawing rivers. Look up and around. Do you recognize the direction of the current? Right in this section, it seems that the flow is very low. How did walls of more than 3 meters high rise on each side? During the movement of a section of lava like this one, the margins cool rapidly by direct contact with the air. Inside, the rest of the molten material continues its course in favor of gravity, polishing the almost solid rock that has remained at the edges. While the eruption lasted, each new gush that descended here overflowed the incipient sidewalls, which grew in height until they became the flanks of a canal. These are very frequent formations in Tenerife, but they are not always distinguished as clearly as here because they are usually covered with vegetation. Soon you will cross to the other side, where you will find a viewpoint to the west, which is worth stopping at. We invite you to listen to track 102 there. Track 103. The most difficult conditions. If I had to describe how the weather is right now, what would I say? If you are enjoying a nice sunny day, you have been lucky. Nice weather is not as usual as in other parts of the island. In general, in the national park, the seasons are very noticeable, but here, above 3,600 meters of altitude, the conditions are even more extreme. You will have noticed that plants are barely growing around you. The environment is usually dry. The wind is frequent, and although it is normal that it is clear, the temperature drops a lot compared to the level of the road. During the winter, it is often around 0 degrees Celsius, and the rocks are covered with a blanket of ice or snow. Under these conditions, life hides to save energy and preserve heat. However, when spring comes, some insects flutter and the lizards go out to sunbathe. At some points, you will also see certain woody plants, such as the margaza or the Teide violet, designed by nature to manage despite the difficulties. As you approach the crater, you will find shady corners where mosses and other smaller plants grow. In many cases, these species benefit from the heat of volcanic gases that still arise from the depths. Life, although scarce, gets to colonize in the most unexpected places. Soon it will reach a point where the slope softens. The fumaroles are clearly visible, and many more white rocks appear. This change has a crucial meaning, as you will understand when, once there, you hear track 104. Track 104. Anatomy of a crater. Although you still have a few meters to reach the highest point, you are already at the edge of the Teide crater. Look inside. The surface is covered with white dust, a product of chemical alterations in the rocks by contact with volcanic gases. In some areas, yellow tones are appreciated. They are crystals of sulfur, which precipitates around the fumaroles and connection points with the Teide's magnetic chamber. which burns about 4,000 meters under its feet and emits gases constantly. This breath of the volcano, which comes to the surface at about 86 degrees Celsius, allows us to know what its activity is. By means of devices such as those you can see from here, constant monitoring of the movements or deformations of the ground, as well as changes in the composition of the gases, is carried out. Under normal conditions, water vapor and carbon dioxide arise above all. But what about that smell of rotten eggs? It is due to small proportions of other substances, such as sulfur, that in part crystallizes. By the way, be very careful not to get too close or sit on damp rocks, so as not to burn or spoil your clothes by contact with the acids that form when water reacts with these elements. Remember also that it is forbidden to leave the path or take any stone, as these are precisely the jewels that explain the value of the national park. When you leave, everything must be as you found it. Next, you will walk along the rocky edge of the crater, ascending slightly. After a bend, you will discover the northern slope of the island in a section delimited by a chain. Continue to reach the maximum level, where we invite you to listen to tracks 105 and 106. Track 105. The Tenerife Building from the Rooftop. Congratulations! You have reached the top of El Teide, the highest point in Spain. The ground rises 3,718 meters above sea level. From here, there is a 360-degree view. If the day is clear, you will see the island of Gran Canaria to the southeast and, to the west, the three most western ones, La Gomera, La Palma, and El Hierro. But it is Tenerife that is shown in all its splendor. On the south side, the Caldera de las Cañadas opens, the rock circus that delimits it, and then soft slopes to the coast. In contrast, to the north, the slope is continuous and accentuated. Also, the colors are different. The strip covered by a dense green carpet stands out. It is the natural park of Corona Forestal, a forest that surrounds the national park and that is formed mainly by Canarian pines. In some sectors, these trees upholster lava channels, like the one that has been traced today. Below, the dispersed vegetation is mixed with agricultural plots and populations, such as Icod de las Vinas, La Guancha, or Los Realejos. On the coast of the Orotava Valley, there is Puerto de la Cruz, one of the reference tourist centers. As you may have noticed, Tenerife is organized according to the slope and, above all, the altitude, because in each elevation, the environmental conditions are very different. The Pico del Teide is like the roof of this huge building, where each family has settled on the floor they find most suitable. And you, what floor would you live on? One of the causes of this distribution is precisely the phenomenon that many times gives another version of the landscape, the sea of clouds. To know how and why it forms, you can listen to track 106 before embarking on your way back. Track 106, A Sea of Cotton. Contemplating the sea of clouds from practically the sky is spectacular. Sometimes this mantle can reach El Portillo and La Fortaleza and gets tattered when entering the caldera. Its formation is due to the trade winds, which blow from the northeast and reach these latitudes laden with moisture. When they collide with the Canarian slopes, they are forced to climb them to continue their journey. As they rise, their temperature goes down, and by reaching 1,000 meters of altitude, they are already cold enough to form clouds. This phenomenon, which gives life to the forest, occurs mainly in the north-facing slopes, although sometimes it can also appear in the south or completely surround the islands. However, at 2,000 meters of altitude, already in El Teide National Park, the Alisios stumble upon another drier current that acts as a stopper, which is why the highest levels of Tenerife usually have a dry environment and are clear. In fact, the amount of sunshine here is one of the highest in Spain, with approximately 3,000 hours of sunshine per year. You have reached the end of the audio guide for this route on the Telesforo Bravo Trail. You only have to retrace the path to access control. During the journey, enjoy every detail. Keep in mind that being here is a privilege that many people in the past did not have, and that even today depends a lot on the weather. Once you reach the trail, you can take the cable car and descend to the base station. Thank you very much, and see you again soon.